At this point, I'm going to turn the meeting temporarily over to Mr. Mills regarding our administrative hearing liquor license renewal special conditions. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mr. Mills, so you can kind of lead us from here.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. On March 11th of 2016, the acting director of the Division of Alcohol Beverage Control entered an order following a telephone conference or telephone hearing, if you will, that set forth a number of things that needed to be done regarding the license formerly, or perhaps currently, Linnadeer LLC, which is affiliated with the 4 John Street location, and the, I believe, contract purchaser of that license, the appellant in the administrative law or Division of Alcohol Beverage Control matter known as Rock Bottom Entertainment LLC. In that, the appellant, the appeal concerned a number of conditions that Morris Township had imposed on the renewal of that license, which numbered, A through, like Yogi Berra, numbered A through E. But in the order then further directed that the township hold a hearing to entertain argument from the appellant and counsel, and I note that both counsel for Rock Bottom and counsel for Linnadeer are present, and I imagine we'll hear from both of them. The order also suggested that since one of the conditions was that the township imposed a no go-go bar condition as part of the renewal, the order, I'll say, suggested that the township define what it meant, the township, by go-go. We'll return to that in just a moment. In looking through the order, the acting director required us within 30 days of this hearing to provide a transcript of all proceedings below and a detailed explanation of the disciplinary and licensing history of the license. And I am taking that to mean a history developed over a number of years of proceedings before this and predecessors to all of you, and it wasn't my intention to get into anything this evening that re-examined the entire history to this point in time. So, and we'll hear from counsel shortly, but I believe the first order of business would be to consider the definition of go-go, and in that regard, a suggested definition was circulated to each of you individually back in May, and although we've not had any meetings to jointly discuss it because it is truly an open session type of conclusion, I would ask that I can do it if you direct me or someone else can read the proposed definition into the record, see if there's any further comment by way of addition or addendum to it from any of the other members of the governing body, and then act on that. Following a determination of what we mean by go-go, we would then entertain counsel.
Okay. If it's okay, I'll read the definition into the record. I'll then ask for a motion and a second and a vote to accept the definition
Or for any modification.
or for modifications as read. Go-go dancing shall be defined as a rhythmic or exotic form of dance typically occurring in a nightclub or other similar establishment, performed by a dancer or dancers in a sexually provocative manner, emphasizing the dancer's breasts and or buttocks and or genitals on a substantial or regular basis, and performed by a dancer or dancers dressed in bikini or bikini-type clothing or other clothing worn in a sexually provocative manner that does not actually expose the dancer's breast, if the dancer is female, or genitalia, male or female. Does anyone here have any modifications
Just first call for a motion on it and a second, then we'll discuss it.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the definition?
I would make the motion, Mr. Mayor.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Before we ask for a vote, should we ask for a roll call on this?
We will, but I first would ask you to entertain whether
Sure.
anyone has a level of discomfort or comfort or any other modification or alterations with the definition as read.
Okay, so you heard. What he said.
We had opportunity to review a previous version of the definition, and I think the one we're seeing now is built on that previous version, and it's been duly circulated, and I think, enough time has passed and
Okay.
review has taken place that I feel comfortable with it.
Okay. Any other comments from the dais? No? No? So I'm going to ask for a roll call. I mean, roll call vote?
Mrs. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Mancuso?
Yes.
Mr. Sisler?
Yes.
Mayor Camp?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Now, I know that it will, Mr. Williams, I know, and I didn't catch the gentleman's name when he introduced himself. I assume that both of you wish to address the Township Committee, and it's merely a question of who goes first. And so, Mayor, I would invite council up to the council table and take it from there. Or the dais, if the audience they prefer.
What's that?
Or sit there, or you?
Oh, it's fine. Over here? Or you want us?
Wherever you like,
Have enough things.
wherever your pleasure is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Both microphones work.
I know I didn't get your name because I didn't put my hearing aids in before I came to the meeting, so I apologize.
Would it be possible to get a copy of what you just read?
Yes. That you may have mine. You folks can share it with one another. All right, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, good evening, council. Mr. Mills, thank you for having us heard. My name is Thomas Janarone. I'm here representing Rock Bottom Entertainment. And if you bear with me, I'm very new to this matter. And so I have some notes. I do understand that there's a hearing, and this is essentially an extension of that first hearing. So I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. I know Mr. Williams spoke last time about ABC Board and talked to you about some law and responsibilities and whatnot, so I'm not going to go through that. But what I will want to do for my own edification is a quick, brief little background of how we got here. And because I just need to keep this straight for myself here, that dating back, my client, Mr. Anthony Diorio, who's had this property for many, many years, since 1981. He operated as Double D's for a little over 9 years back between 1990 and 1991. And he did so without any ABC violations or any big problems. And then the prison came into town, and the prison was built, and the existence of that prison put a real hurt on his business. Due to the location he was at, and after speaking to people, the use he figured would be best in that location would be to add, I'll use the term go. I typically would use gentleman's club, but if we're talking about go-go, I'll say go-go. So he decided to add go-go, and he operated that himself successfully and without any ABC violations in that year of 1999. Now, I do understand there were some conversations and concerns when he started running it as a go-go, but I've also read a number of reports from your police department of what a great job he had done and what a great job, how good he was to work with, and how willing he was to remedy pretty much anything. It was very good to see. So in the end of that year, he decided to sell. He sold to another operator of go-go. And this, I'm not going to bring names in, but she didn't do a very good job. We know that, and there's no debate to that. So by 2004, it's my understanding that a number of violations had occurred, and the disciplinary proceedings had been instituted and traveled its way through the Office of Administrative Law and through the State Division of Alcohol Beverage Control, such that in 2006, all these violations were adjudicated and they were finally resolved. And at the end of that, that license, in fact, was sold from that operator to the Palm Bar. I don't know the corporate name. I've had to take some shortcuts to catch up on all this, as you can imagine. Then the Palm Bar operated from 2006 to 2011, but they weren't very successful. It's my understanding, in large part due to the location. My client did more than his share to try to keep those guys open, but eventually he had to evict them due to the fact that they just weren't cutting it. So then, from 2011 to I guess the end of 2015, the building is sat there. It's it's a revenue absorbing. It's a large building sitting there. So, having not been able to attract anyone to operate the facility, my client decided his only option at this point to stop the bleeding, so to speak, was to operate himself, since he had done so in the past, had done so successfully. And that makes perfect sense. So now here we are, and it's my understanding that the town has, that my client had applied for for the liquor license transfer. He had passed through the police investigations, and he had been cleared as being a person who's qualified to operate the license, and then further the town has approved this particular location for the use he intends it for, which is go-go dancing. But then the problem we have is that the ABC board, is that you folks sitting as an ABC board are effectively blocking these approvals that the town has already given by imposing special conditions that absolutely cripple the intended use and negate the fact that there was these other permissions were given. And this use is allowed under law, and to block this ability this way is just simply not proper. And, my client's predecessor screwed up. There's no doubt. There's actually two predecessors. This was over 10 years ago. These were things that happened prior in 2004. So this is a long time ago. And she was not a good operator. And you know what happens when you're not a good operator, especially in the alcohol beverage control world? You lose your license, and that's what happened. She did a bad job, and she paid for it. And the legal channels were used, and she paid for it. The problem is now you guys are prosecuting my client for the sins of someone from 12 years ago. Again, those things were brought to final resolution as a matter of law. There's nothing to suggest that my client had anything to do with those violations. And to suggest that my client is culpable in any way for the sins of his predecessor is, that's just simply it's unfair and it's outright wrong. It's kind of like, we're going to give you a driver's license, or we're going to give you a car, but on that driver's license it's going to say you can't use this license to operate a car. And that's really where we are with this right now. I understand that once bitten, twice shy, and that I'm guessing the reason why you folks don't want that there is because you're afraid the same thing's going to happen again. What I'm saying is that would actually make some sort of sense to me if Mr. DiOrio was a stranger or somebody that had no track record. But I think the fact remains that he has a track record. He has a good track record. He's a resident, and it's my understanding he's been a good resident over all the years. The placement of that prison really hurt that location and hurt my client. His annual taxes are $17,000. He has carrying costs of between $25,000 and $30,000 a year. Right now he's missing out on rent of over $200,000 a year. And if you talk about lost potential revenues that he could have been operating businesses there, had he been operating a business or had someone else operating a successful business, you're talking about losses in the millions here. And then this is just dragging on. This business that he invested his time, his money, sweat equity was essentially, pulled out from under him with that prison. But now insult is being added to injury because now he's doing what he can to try to get back on his feet and to try to turn that location into something viable, and it's being blocked, and we're really not quite sure why. I have to mention, I find it very interesting that you don't seem to mind the activities, and I'm going to call it at that location because it essentially is, you have a prison there. And the activities go on in that prison. The criminals, perhaps some people aren't criminals in it. You have criminals, you have traffic back and forth. You have that prison attracting certain types of people, I'm sure. You have potentials of riots, of escapes, of other conduct, violent conduct, drugs, other things within the prison walls. But those are all things that would be known to anyone that's going to put a jail into town. But the council didn't say to the prison, well, you know what? We're afraid that these things are going to happen, therefore, we're not going to give you your zoning or your licensing or whatever avenues you would have to block the prison. And I get it. It's not for everybody. Adult-oriented businesses are not for everybody. And if it's not your personal cup of tea, that's all well and good. But that's not a reason to prohibit a person from operating a legal business. And, every day he's being prevented from operating here. It's costing him a ton of money. But I'm sure his property tax check gets cashed every time he sends it in. But let's really get down to the bottom line here. The bottom line here is that approving this transfer without the condition crippling his intended use doesn't stop you from really being on him and making sure that he's doing the right thing. If you just don't want the business because you don't like that kind of business, that's one thing. But if you don't mind the business, if it's run properly and legally, that's another. Well, one of the ways you can do it properly and legally is you're the ABC board. Your local police, the state police, you have an incredible amount of control over licensees. It's more so than anything else. If there wasn't a license there, your police would have much more difficulty trying to control the conduct that goes on in those four walls. You have an incredible degree of control. You guys know what you're doing. You guys are a sophisticated, intelligent, successful board. Mr. Mills has been around for a long time. He's been in and out of the administrative hearings. He knows his way around the ABC. If there's violations, he knows how to bring them. He knows how to write them. Furthermore, if my client's not doing what he's supposed to be doing, at renewal time, every June 30th, you have the opportunity at that time to impose special conditions, but at least those special conditions will be based on something factual, something to say, okay, you know what, Mr. Euro, we gave you your shot, and this isn't going to work. You can even say, I told you so. And that's understandable. But he has a track record of doing the right thing, and you're blocking him for fear that he's not going to. He fully understands the control you have. He's not, I spent a good deal talking to him, and he doesn't have his head in the sand. He gets it. He knows. In fact, I even made a comment to him. I said, you do realize that, that you get this open, they're going to be watching you. And he said, and he welcomed it. And then when I read correspondences with the police before, he wasn't making that up, because even the police said that he welcomed people when he had it to come in to review. If there's any problems, let me know. He wanted to do the right thing. He put together documents that were for all the dancers to sign and other entertainers to sign to say, look, if I do this, I'm in trouble. Beyond that, in my 18 years of doing this, I saw something else that I've never seen before. He had something for the customers, which I had never seen that before. So he really gone the extra mile. And I think that's why you didn't have all the problems with him that you did with the person that took over afterwards. And now the stakes will be even higher for him. If you pass this, if you allow the transfer to happen, the stakes will be even higher, because right now he has a revenue-sucking building that's killing him. Now, if you let him in there, then what's he going to do? He's going to spend money. He's going to get the place open. It's going to cost him more money. Now, not only is he gonna be back to where he was with an empty building if he screws up. But now, he's gonna lose all of his investment, all of his time and money. And you know what? He's not a dumb guy. You know, he's doing this because he's a businessman. This isn't fun and games for him. So he's not gonna go in there, he's not some young kid in there that wants to go in there and be a show-off and throw money around. He wants to make money in that location. And due to that prison, these are one of the only uses that make sense in that location. So, you know, finally, there was a conversation with the ABC acting director that I'm not even quite sure you guys met with. I wasn't privy to that. I know Mr. Mills was, and Bob, you were, and I think Glenn Gorman was. And you know, the director heard counsel's arguments. I'm guessing from what I was told, and looked at the conditions, and he remanded them back here to say, well, you know, you guys should discuss this more. I think you should really think about what that means in his head, as opposed to saying, you know what, you guys are right. So I think you should really think about that. And you know, I will just say that any other use and any other entertainment use that facility would be used for without a liquor license would give you much less control. So I would just ask you to transfer the license without the special conditions. I think Mr. Duria is more than happy to work with everybody, the police, the council, anyone, and address problems as they may arise. And again, by doing so, you're not losing anything. You have a great deal of control, and you have a great deal of power over the operation, and perhaps most importantly, he has a lot to lose. Thank you.